Maybe we can start with the consumer point.
There is a risk with technologization of financial services, of financial exclusion. There is a risk of wrong understanding by consumers of what they're doing and of overload of information. Linked to, and they are coming back later to open finance, manipulation of the choices that you are being shown. So there is really a lot of things that need to be said there. Now, more specifically on payments, because that's why you're here for, a few things that I know are controversial, or I believe are controversial. Strong customer authentication. This is a must. Stop delaying rollout of strong customer authentication. And we very often hear from you that it's security versus convenience. There is no negotiation. You cannot compromise on security. We also believe that what you need to invest in is make strong customer authentication convenient, helps. It's really, I mean, I have no problems with that. And we hear most of the feedback that we have from people, real people, is that no problem. They have understood that it's important for the security.
Can I just quickly challenge you on that? Because I think it's excellent you brought something controversial, because we did ask to have a lot of discussion here on this. On the strong customer authentication, I mean, it is rather lovely to have these invisible payments, right? Where you just get out of an Uber and it's paid and it's super convenient. And if something is really high value or something unusual, I understand that I have to do extra authentication. But sometimes the journey seems a bit arduous. Is that really serving the consumer? Do really most consumers want all these pop-ups and consents and second factors?
The point is, I mean, if you would already get rid of all the pop-ups and consents that you don't really need in your journey as a consumer on a website or so, that would already be helpful, and keep it to those that are needed. But in terms of security, we believe, maybe not for a €5 trip, and for example, for the, you know, how do the contactless payments, you don't necessarily need to authenticate, you know, but from time to time, well, this is the type of balance that you can strike. But really saying that consumers don't like to be, I mean, if they know about what's at stake, they don't mind having a click more to do for that part.
From my business, we see that consumers automatically go where it's the most convenient and where there is less friction. And we've seen that in particular with the SCA rollout, that mobile payments are, you know, skyrocketing. And I think to a large extent that's because of the easier SCA experience. So, of course, I mean, there can be no discussion really on the trade-off between security and consumer friendliness, but nevertheless there is.
You're a service provider, and presumably you're in the middle of AI and cloud and 100 other things. Now, how is technology impacting your business?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. We are, without a doubt, and we definitely want to view ourselves as that, and we definitely want the market to view ourselves as a technology company. There is no doubt that new technologies in payments is something which we are investing heavily in, and we see it both in, I suppose, the general omni-channel creation of payments. We see it in AI, and we are also investing heavily in AI, both obviously on the fraud, which I'm sure everyone here is also doing, where that's quite obvious, but we're also looking at it in using the data and creating AI to enhance the customer experience. I think that is definitely something where we're seeing huge growth potential with servicing both our banks, but also the merchants, how we can create better experiences also for the consumers on AI. I suppose another main trend is, as I've just said, sort of the general move towards mobile payments, and I think if you use the mobile payment and sort of add the data experience there, then you can create quite new sort of payment experiences for all the consumers. That's something which we're also heavily invested in, and we see huge growth potential there as well.
How do you balance this explosion of technology and still keeping us safe and operational?
Yes, I mean, when there's a mistake, you suddenly, it's a crisis, because a small mistake somewhere in the process can create in our systems shutting down for a while, and to that extent, it does become quite vulnerable. But these sort of experiences are quite far and few between, is our experience. But nevertheless, I think the answer really is using technology also to minimize these vulnerabilities, and having backup systems, and having systems which various fail-safe systems, etc., etc.
So maybe you can say a little bit about how you feel in this space.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So I have to admit, when I received this invitation from Etienne, from Michael, I thought, oh no, here we go. What should we do here? Should I appear today and risk the wrath of many people who see us as quite controversial? Or is it the case that there are some who really appreciate the technologies? So I've been at Google for a very long time, always in product partnerships. And now I do come to you today looking after Google Pay. And with Google Pay, it's interesting because with Google, everybody always assumes we're doing something strange with the data. And I like to address it head on. We are a very successful data company. We make a huge amount of money very successfully with advertising, and that's because we can tell all these different advertisers how their money is translating into people viewing their products and services. So we've done a terrific job on that. Now we have the immense fortune to make enough money to finance all these products that we actually don't make any money on, whether that's Maps or, for example, Google Pay. And then people assume, oh, is it because Google wants to have access to more data? And on Google Pay, I've launched the product in several European countries. I remember having very controversial questions, especially in Italy. You can see me after this, probably one of the most embarrassing interviews ever, about whether we would use the data for targeted advertising. And what I've always told the ecosystem is, no, actually, the reason why we do Google Pay is it actually supports our advertising model, in the sense that it's not about targeting, in the sense that people who search, they come to us, they search. The ones who want to transact, if we can support them in that transaction that follows, whether it's on a bus, in the metro, online, in store, if we can support, they are more likely to come back and search with us. So it's a virtuous cycle for us. It works very well, and that means that we can finance all these fine products. But of course, with Google Pay, we have to work with the ecosystem. We can't do anything on our own. If a bank doesn't want to work with us, they don't have to. But to get back to the way we operate, it is an open ecosystem. On Android, you can have all sorts of technologies that promote mobile payments, as we see from the banks that have their own HCE solutions, as we see from the other competing wallets, such as Samsung. And we're absolutely fine with that. It's actually good. It keeps us on our toes. It means that we have to have something that's more compelling that our ecosystem partners see value in. And I think that's where technology can play an important role. It creates new models that we all have to do really well with. So to your point about consumer choice, I agree with you. There's a problem sometimes. I see my father and how I had to explain SCA to him and why he couldn't use his normal SMS OTP, but he had to log into his app. And he still doesn't understand it, to be fair. I have to keep on explaining to him. So I think it can play a very useful role, but we have to actually work with regulators, and we have to work with our ecosystem partners to make sure that we are staying useful and relevant.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit how that works, because you are owned by the banks, right? You are not you're not a GAFA, but you're still very successful in that space.
Yeah, thank you. I think we might be considered as a fintech. I mean, in the end, we are a bank-owned company, and from the beginning, we've been hearing a lot about instant payments and cooperation. I think we've managed to achieve a quite successful approach on those cases, right? We started as a P2P service in Spain, so basically enabling instant payments based on the phone proxy. And what we managed is to create a word-of-mouth viralization of the service. I mean, word of mouth did great. the people start to sell the service all around their relatives, because in the end, in payments that we've heard before, the network effect is key in order to become a successful player. Then what we did is just leveraging this information, this piece of information, which is the phone number, we managed to create also an e-commerce solution for merchants, where you just type the phone number and you get the request to pay into your phone. So you just get a push payment, a push notification, and then you just need to accept the payment in your own banking app. So we don't have a standalone app. We are a bit strange in the market in this sense, because we don't own a standalone app. We are embedded within more than 30 banking apps. What we're building is again another word that it's been said a lot of times today, a digital identity for payments, right? Because in the end, we build the phone number as the proxy for users, just to pay, to get paid, and eventually to use it in more and more places.
Maybe I can return to you, because we've talked a lot about sort of different ways of doing payments and finance, either from big techs or from a fintech in a bank, and some say it has to be super convenient. You say, can you go over that a little bit and just share your view?
Yes, I mean, you need to do behavioral science. If you offer the most convenient solution to the consumer without telling them the risks that are related to that, he will go for the most convenient solution. So if you're a responsible business, you either by default provide for strong customer authentication, or and that's the second best solution, you inform the consumer. But you know also that on the mobile phone, if you want to be informed, you have to go through all those very burdensome processes, and you don't do it. So really, don't say that people choose they don't choose between security and convenience. They trust you that you have done it. And if that's not the case, then you should be responsible for that. First of all, because you also spoke about technology that can break down and that technology must fix it. The best way to fix it is to keep cash. You need to, that's what people want. Keep cash as one of the options. And when you speak about open finance, and when you speak about opening up the ecosystem to non-financial institutions, you have really this risk. At the end, let's call it the Google solution, even if it's other players, they can be more convenient because they have much more data about you than the banks do. That's unfair competition. It's not a level playing field. So you should not be happy about that. And we are not happy as consumers, because most of the people don't know. But if you really know what they know about you and how they can then manipulate the choice that is being proposed to you, it should not become an open bar to data. And that's what the risk is, and that's why we are very cautious about the rules around open finance. It's very important that there is not too much interaction between the purely financial data and the behavioral data of a consumer.
To Monique's point, there are always alternatives, and that is important. So, and that is something that we are acutely aware of course, at Google, because if somebody decides, they're a little bit creepy, today I won't search with Google, there are alternatives. And that's fine, and that keeps us on our toes. And if you don't want to use Google products, you can live a perfectly great life without having to do that, which is super, right? And I think that's the message. If, we do need user choice, and we have a huge responsibility to create products that people trust. So that's why when it comes to SCA and compliance and so forth, we are on it. We spent a very bad year preparing for SCA. Some of our executives in the US could not understand why we spent so much time. But the good news, and this is to some of the points made earlier, the good news is that when we are ready for products in Europe, we're usually ready for products everywhere in the world, because Europe is very good at some of this regulation. Just to get back to the data point, what's very interesting is we do sit on a lot of data. We make good use of it. What's interesting is I've been pulled into lots of discussions around open data. And I remember being pulled into discussions from the Spanish side. And what's interesting is we share a huge amount of data with our banking partners. Very few of our banking partners make the most of it. So when I hear, oh, Google, you have to share more data, we do, but nobody's using it. So I find that incredibly frustrating. The fintechs do use it, right? So that's where I also say, if you have access to data, do something with it.
The core, for example, use against fraud, right? I mean, something that gives me the real heebie-jeebies is when I see what's happening in the UK with Instant, right? They have faster payments for many years, and push payment fraud, APP fraud, as it's called there, is exploding, hundreds of millions. And we are going to be walking into this, right? Because we are rolling out instant like crazy. We're increasing the limit to 100,000 per transaction. How are we going to get a handle on that one?
But it's the same with the banks, it's the same with us. I mean, billions and billions of transactions. There is no way you can hire enough people to sift through this data. That is obvious. And even the FSAs, I mean, most countries have, what, 100, 200 people, stuff. The volumes when everything goes digital is just insurmountable without technology. So obviously we use AI and data and sort of big data to sort of see the patterns, see the anomalies. Obviously there's always a person involved, but yes, it's checking the anomalies, checking the patterns. What are some of the things which we see are sort of our red flags? We then collate all these sort of false positives, but also positives, and see, is there something which needs a person to be involved in that? But so, I mean, the sheer numbers mean that there is only ever going to be one way you're going to get to grips with fraud, and that is through use of data and AI and machine learning.
I would like to turn the discussion to a totally different direction on technology, because you've been so successful with your mobile solution, bank-based solution, and you're not the only one. There are a few others. There's Swish, and there's Ideal, and Mobile Pay. So there are actually quite a few bank-based mobile solutions. Now, Martina, please don't listen, but wouldn't it be an idea just to connect those up and build a mobile solution that way?
Yeah, I mean, for us it makes sense. Yeah, just a brief note regarding fraud. I understand that it's really hard to monitor everything what's happening in real time, even when you are talking about instant payments that cannot be reversed. But for example, in our case, we have operational limits, so you cannot send more than 5,000 euros per month, 2,000 euros per day. You cannot receive more than 2,000 euros per day. So we are having this kind of operational limits that help us reduce these fraudulent cases. Regarding your question, yes, I mean, we will look into that. I mean, I've been involved in working with here at TN in the SEPA proxy lookup too. So there are different solutions in the market. We joined recently EMSA and of course EPI, which tried to achieve a different approach in this regards, right? So when we started working within the EPC, creating this rule book regarding the interoperability scheme, I mean, we were into that, but we still were developing our own solution, so it was not a priority in the moment. We're trying to first grow where we're building domestically before going abroad, right? So then COVID came, and not so much focus into that at that period. Now we are more interested in looking into another direction, right? So we joined EMSA. It is a forum where you can share your experience, and they've been working for a couple of years, I think now, trying to create a common understanding on what interoperability should be. So yes, I mean, for our case, it could make more sense to create an Iberian corridor, maybe with Portugal, talking also with the French community. So we understand that proximity is key for these kind of solutions in order to offer something to the consumer, right? Because in the end, it's unlikely that you are going to share money with so many people that around you that they don't have a Spanish account, right? I mean, the idea is to learn from what other solutions are doing, and of course we see that some value for the P2P, and of course for the merchant space. There are some people traveling to abroad, there are some people coming to Spain, so why not facilitating the options to pay with your mobile in-store payments, and also for online payments as well.
I hope I've asked all the questions you would have asked these extremely intelligent and knowledgeable people. If there's anything else anybody on the panel still wants to get off their chest,
I just want to say, on the question of cash, I completely agree. It's a bomb which grenade you threw onto the stage here. But I mean, I think every company, we don't have a view on cash, and we shouldn't have. But we do understand that we are in the business of digital and digitalizing, fast-paced. and that we do also have a responsibility to make sure that everyone in society maintains the ability to pay in all situations. So we also have an educational role, and I think that's important to stress as well.
I mean, you've seen that in the Nordics, haven't you? That when cash was being abolished, that you had a bit of a revolution from some people who said we can't pay anymore. We had that in the UK as well when checks were abolished. All the charities were going to die and pensioners were going to die, and so they had to reintroduce checks. So, yeah.
Can I just say, did you see the panic in the supermarket in Germany when the apps were down?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just it happens, and it can be also in an era where cybersecurity is not 100% sure. It can happen.
No,
So we
absolutely.
need to have a fallback solution. Huh?